This week's word of the week is going to be 2,800, which is actually a number I know, but 2,800, think about it for a minute. What does 2,800 have to do with welding, and especially welding of steel? Can you think of anything? We're going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 2,800 is the melting temperature of low carbon steel. Now, how did I come up with this for the word of the week? We did acetylene last week, and I asked the guy, I said, hey, what's acetylene burn at? What's the temperature in Fahrenheit? He thought about it and he said, well, steel's got to melt at, a 1,000 or a couple thousand degrees. And I said, well, I guess we're going to do word of the week 2,800, because if you're in the welding world, you need to know that low carbon steel melts at around 2,800. So let's go back up here, and we got some other temperatures. Right here, 5,600, 11,000. With respect to the acetylene with oxygen, it burns at around 5,600 degrees Fahrenheit. And these aren't exact numbers. You're not going to put a temperature gauge up on an oxy fuel flame and have it go 56 on the money. It's the same thing with the 2,800. It's around 2,800. So what I did is I looked up the first 3 websites when I Google search temperature of melting temperature of low carbon steel in Fahrenheit, and the first 3 websites I got were right here. The first one said 26 to 28, the next one said 2786, and the next one said 2642. So they're all kind of in the range of the 2,800. That's a pretty good range right there, 26 to 28. A lot of times when I say what's the melting temperature of steel, I say just 2,800. It's not exactly 2,800. We'll get back over here. These 2 numbers are important, and 2,800 is important because if you're cutting or welding, you got to be well above 2,800 degrees in order to hurt steel, if you will. So 5,600 is your cutting temperature right down here. The welding arc exceeds 11,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's way higher than the melting temperature of steel, which is around 2,800. So that's what these 2 numbers are. If you're going to hurt steel, I say hurt, but cut or weld it, those are way higher, right? So those 2 numbers are important too. So we'll go back up to the other board here, to the melting temperatures of low carbon steel. And I started thinking of it in a couple different ways. First, you need to think of steel as a solid solution. If the atmosphere was 3,000 degrees, a piece of steel would just be a puddle on the floor like water. The fact is, the atmosphere at ambient temperatures is around 70 degrees, right? So 2,800 degrees is important because it's not even close to 70 degrees, right? So it's not going to melt. But if the atmosphere was 3,000 degrees, it's just like water. You got like water on the floor. So you got to think of steel as like a solid solution. Then I started to think of like what are pros and cons of the fact that steel has a melting temperature of around 2,800 degrees. And I don't know if that's the best way to think of it, but that's what I started out at here, and I went with high service temp. So it's got a high service temperature of 2,800 degrees. So as long as it's not anywhere near 2,800 degrees, it's a good material, right? But then it's also a con. Say if it's above 2,800 degrees, it's going to be weak. So it's kind of a good and bad that the melting temperature is 2,800 degrees. And it's the same thing with welding. I thought, well, it's good because we can weld it because the welding arc's 11,000 degrees, so it can weld it easy. But if you have a 110 welder, let's just say, and you don't have a lot of power, that's also a con because it's tough to weld because you don't have enough heat because the melting temperature is so high. So again, that's both a pro and a con with welding here. So I kind of lost that idea and went, well, let's explain in this video why there's a little bit of fluctuation in the actual right on the money melting temperature. And that's going to come in with alloys and carbon, right? Like I said, low carbon steel, right? Well, when you're welding, you don't want high carbon steels unless you're trying to make something hard and brittle. Most of the time you want low carbon because the more carbon you have in steel, after you weld it and it cools too quickly, it can turn into a martensitic, hard, brittle structure. What does that really mean? In layman's, it gets brittle and can crack. So the carbon content and the alloys are what determines that range of 26 to 2,800 depending on what the steel is. There's no steel that's just steel. There's a ton of different grades of steel. So the main thing to remember with this is the melting temperature of low carbon steel is going to be in a range around 26 to 28. I always say 2,800. You can make that judgment for yourself. But the melting temperature of steel is around 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit. forgot to do my little sign off, but, so I hope all that makes sense. We're gonna head out here. Just remember, you need to know the melting temperature of steel. It's around 2,800 degrees. That's all we got for this week. Thanks for watching and subscribing to TV Welding. We'll see you next time.